Welcome back to Weightlifting as a Lens for Learning Higher Principles. Thank you to everyone who's commented and supported the previous two videos. I really wasn't expecting that at all. And I hope that anything that was in those videos was actually beneficial to somebody because it was a lot of fun to make and it gave me a lot of joy to make, but it would make me even happier if people actually benefited from it. I wanted to say thank you to some of the friends that I have that gave me feedback on some of these presentations, just how to make them better. And I've tried to incorporate some of that feedback. I also wanted to point out something that was really big blessing for me, which was in the last video, I pointed out that God will teach you through your experiences and through what you're focused on, what you're interested in at the time. And when I decided to make these presentations, he taught me quite a bit over the years in as I've undertaken the practice of weightlifting, like I explained. But as I focus in just the past couple of weeks on making these presentations, he's taught me at least as much, if not more, just in those few weeks as he has in all the passive learning that I've done previous to that. And so I just wanted to share that as a testimony or a witness on just how much he is willing to teach you if you really are focusing and if you're asking with intent and if you're sincere in what you want to do, that really invites additional instruction from the Lord. And I felt that as I've thought about these principles. And actually today, I wanted to talk about one of those things that he reminded me that I should talk about as part of this process, which I hadn't considered before. And that is the process of faith and how that applies. And I started thinking about this as I was trying to decide or pondering on why I would decided to weightlift or how I would convince someone or explain to someone why they should start to weightlift. And I realized that it actually did serve as a really good um, example of how you would use the process of faith to both decide on a goal or an outcome and work as hard as you can in order to achieve it in the process that you go through there. So this is the video that we'll do today. It is going to be probably quite a bit longer than the ones that I usually make, just because there's a lot to talk about. So if you'll forgive the length and stick with it, I hope that it will be beneficial as we learn through these things. So let's get started with the general principle of the process of faith. Generally, I planned on starting with the analogy or the example of weightlifting and then showing how those principles are derived and how I extracted them or were taught them. But in this case, I want to lead with some of the principles so they're more identifiable as you think through this process with regards to the examples that I'll give. So the general principle is that faith is a process, and it's the process of intentionally obtaining outcomes, changes, or improvements. Any outcome that you obtain is driven by the desires, actions, and reasons you have. And the intention of that seeking, or how intentionally you seek, greatly affects your ability to go after those outcomes. All outcomes that you receive in your life are a result of this process. However, most of the time, we just do this subconsciously. And so we follow whatever the easiest path is or whatever feels good usually. And so we obtain suboptimal or weaker outcomes or worse outcomes than we could have if we were intentional about it. To that point, greater outcomes require stronger desires, more difficult actions, and better reasons. And that should be obvious that if something that you want to achieve is very, very great and very, very valuable, as determined by you, you're going to have to do a lot more in order to get it. I also wanted to underscore a few things that faith is not. I think this is particularly hard. Sometimes we have these things confused. And before I get to this number 4 here, back to on the thought of it being a process. When we talk about first principles of the gospel, we talk about faith and we talk about repentance. We typically talk about faith as a event or a thing that you have, and repentance as a process that you go through. And really, it's much closer to being the other way around. Faith is the process, repentance is the event. And I look forward to getting into more about repentance and what that means and how to do that in further videos. But today we're going to focus on the process of faith. So chew on that for a little bit. Now back to faith, what it is not. It's not believing in something you lack the reasons to believe, right? That's just wishing. That's desiring something that you have no idea how to get or why you should get it. It's also not believing in something that you have strong reasons to disbelieve. That's called delusion. And we most often see this sort of thing where people think that something is like something that they do is going to affect them differently, or something is going to be better for them than other people, despite the preponderance of evidence that suggests otherwise. So consider these couple of things as we're talking about faith going forward. Next, I wanted to share a couple of scriptures that sort of underlie this process. The first is from Moroni 7. It's verses 20 through 21. And he says, "And now, my brethren, how is it possible that ye can lay hold upon every good thing? And now I come to that faith of which I said I would speak, and I will tell you the way whereby ye may lay hold on every good thing." And I've highlighted here in this first verse that Mormon who's speaking here is saying that the way that you get anything that is good, how you actually obtain something good, is through faith. Okay, there is no other process that you can use in order to lay hold on every good thing. And then in the second verse down here in Ether 12:19, we read, "And there were many whose faith was so exceedingly strong, even before Christ came, who could not be kept from within the veil. But truly they saw with their eyes the things which they had beheld with an eye of faith, and they were glad." And so what does this mean? It means that these people obtained the thing that they sought after in actuality. They had the experience, or they received the blessing, or they saw with their actual eyes things that they had only been able to see in their minds through an eye of faith, things that they were able to imagine and desire firmly and work towards without actually having received it. And I wanted to note that the result of those processes, the result of seeking in faith, was that they were glad. They received joy. And that's the same for us. So let's start here with desires, right? Desires are the what of the process of faith. They are the thing that drives you, your outcome change or improvement that you want. It's really important to understand that only you can have a desire. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but somebody else can't want something for you and have it have the same effect for you. It has to be something that you desire. And also, you are always desiring something, even if you're not aware of what you're desiring. Desires in terms of things like weightlifting or fitness sound like I want to be stronger or leaner. I want to look better or feel better. I want to be healthier. Things of this nature. Desires are emotional underpinnings of your faith. So they provide the emotional support for the process that you're going through. And the specifics of your desires really matter. The more specific your desire is, the greater outcomes it can yield, and the more identifiable the path will be, because your desires determine the specifics of your path. And so you really need to understand and put as much thought into what your desires are before you start trying to obtain them. And as an example of this, if you're setting out to do a program in the gym and you want to lift weights, and you determine that your desire is to be stronger, the number of weights that you'll lift, how heavy the weight will be, how frequently you lift, and the types of lifts that you do will be very, very different from someone who's wanting to maximize their mobility, or someone who wants to maximize their hypertrophy, which is their the size of their muscles, for example. Like that's what bodybuilders do, they max hypertrophy. And it will be even more different from someone who wants to do long form endurance training. And actually, long form endurance and hypertrophy training are actually mutually exclusive almost to the effect that they are detrimental to each other. So, working hard on one makes it hard to achieve the other. So, that's why it's so important to really understand what your desires are because it lets you know the specifics of your path or at least what to look for. So, actions are the how to get what you want of faith. So, according to your desires, what do you need to do to get it? Too often, we look at faith and we think it's something that I believe or it's something that I think, something that I mentally concentrate on, but you're not actually doing anything. And this just isn't true. You have to do things in order to obtain what you desire. And while your desires help you understand the path, there's lots of unknowns that could be. So start asking yourself questions like this for your desire. How well known is the path? In other words, do you know lots of other people who have traveled it? Or is there a lot of information on how to get what you want? In terms of weightlifting, yes, like if you want to become stronger, if your desire was to become stronger, there are hundreds of different programs out there that will help you do that. And there's lots of information available. Plus, you could go to any gym near you, walk up to the strongest looking guy there and say, "What are you doing in order to be what you are?" And he or she should be able to tell you. How you search for your path will differ depending on how readily available information is. Sometimes the path is super obscure. What if the thing that you desire is something that nobody else has ever done before or hasn't had? You might have to invent your own path. You might have to really blaze a trail, and that takes exponentially greater faith in order to do. By far, the best way to find the right path to your desire, in other words, the right action, is to find someone who's already done exactly what you want or already has exactly what you want. Because then they can tell you step by step what to do. And if you follow what they say, you should get the same desire. So in the process, you'll gather all the information that you can, and then you'll design a path to your desire. Now you won't know with sure knowledge, right? You won't know for surety that the path that you've set out will get you what you want. But you will, you want to make sure that you have as much information as you can to feel like you can go forward. And so this is an example of what it might look like. You might say my desire is to get stronger. That's not specific enough. So I would say, what does stronger mean? So what if you said, stronger means I want to be able to bench press my body weight. And then the action that you're going to take is I'm going to lift weights for 1 hour, 3 times a week for 3 months, based on a program that you read about or someone talked to you about on YouTube. And I did also want to give out for actual weightlifting advice. I really do like Alan Thrall at Untamed Strength. Has a lot of instructional videos and a lot of beginner guides to heavy barbell lifting. So just a plug there for Alan. Why do you believe the path that you've chosen is the right one to get you where you want to go? This is reason. This is the reasons behind why you do what you do. Your reasons underlying your actions provide the power to do them. Reasons are logical, they're evidence based, right? They come from a myriad of sources. They come from your personal experience, they come from the testimony of other people, and they come from reputable scientific sources, and they also come from people that aren't so reputable. And so you have to weigh how strong the evidence that you're receiving is using your own rational mind and your desires. You should be looking for as many positive reasons as you can find for why the path that you've chosen is the one that will get you your outcome. It's also important to look at negative reasons that are out there. This is like when you look at a review on a product, and you shouldn't just read the 5-star reviews. You should probably also read the 1-star reviews and see if there's anything glaringly wrong with something before you buy it. And sometimes those 1-star reviews are really, really good. They have a really important piece of information, right? And so if something in a negative review is strong enough to dissuade you from all the positives, you're not likely to buy a product like that. And so if you're undertaking a path, like if you found a program that you thought was going to give you the outcomes that you wanted, like for example, we have the thought of you're going to learn how to bench press your body weight and you're going to lift 3 times a week for 3 months to do that. And you found a person who said, I did this and my arms fell off, and I can show you exactly how. That's probably a strong enough reason not to do that program. So make sure that you weigh both sides of this issue, right? You have to be able to look at positive and negative reasons. And only if the positive ones truly outweigh the negative ones should you move forward on this path. When you're evaluating evidence and from sources, it's really important to do your very best to weigh the credibility of the evidence, right? Despite having seen multiple other people use weightlifting to get stronger and done it myself and helped other people help other people to have done it. I have also met several people that I ask why they don't lift, and they say lifting weights just doesn't work for me. And when I push for why, in other words, tell me the reasons why it doesn't work for you, there's never really a good reason. It's, oh, I just don't like it, or it feels bad, or something, or my body is different. Like there's always some magic reason that it doesn't work. And what's really going on here is they're just not following the path. So be very careful of the information that you get. It's very important to be ruthless. I think that's the right word when it comes to evaluating your reasons, because you need to poke as many holes as possible in both the positive ones and negative ones. And again, just wanted to underscore that you should use your rational mind. You need to think these things through with as much logic as you have, because reasons are logical. And you need to listen to your conscience, which is the voice of God to you. And the stronger your conscience is, the more you listen to what it says, the more succinct the answers and the information it will give you. And that will really help you in making decisions like this. So once you've thought through your desires and your actions and your reasons, it's really important to write down your path. This will let you be able to evaluate it more easily going forward. And so here what I've done is, and I know this is a little bit busy, so forgive the slide, but I've gone through and written out a chart for exactly what I would do in order to weigh these things to decide that weightlifting a certain way would get me the desire that I want. So I have my desire up here at the top. It says I want to get strong enough to bench press my body weight. The action that I'm going to take to get that is I'm going to lift weights for 45 minutes, 3 times per week for 3 months, based on the reasons that are below, right? So here's your reasons why. These are your positive reasons. I see people who lift weights look stronger than me, and they can do things that I can't. Someone I trust, like a friend, has experience and recommends it for what I want. There's information I believe is reliable that has provided a program, such as something that you saw like on a video, or you downloaded a program or something from a reputable source. It makes sense to me that lifting heavy things would make me stronger, right? That's just logic that you use on your own. Like you can come to that conclusion on your own without any help. And I believe being able to do something like this will make me more confident, right? So that's not even a reason based on exactly the science, but it's part of the desire, and part of the outcome is more confidence, and that's great. Now, what are the negative reasons you might have? Well, I'm tired and I don't have time. I've heard all those before. An honest person that says I don't want to and I have not any motivation to do this, like those are, at least they're being honest. You should definitely list things like that. You might say my back hurts, so maybe you're afraid of getting hurt by weightlifting, which is a super valid concern, and you should think about that. And since you're starting something new that you've never done before, maybe you're afraid of being embarrassed, which I know is, social anxiety or things like that are big for people. And so it's not that it should stop you, but you should definitely list it as one of your negative reasons. And then what you're going to go do is you're going to evaluate those reasons. You're going to use your own ability to think, and you're going to listen to your conscience, and you're going to poke as many holes in those things as you can. And so when it comes to some of your negative reasons, for example, when it says I'm tired because I'm out of shape, right? Like that's you thinking this is the reason that you're tired. Like you need to get stronger, maybe you won't be so tired, right? I don't have any time. Well, I watched Netflix for 2 hours today. So maybe if I didn't watch Netflix, I had more than enough time to lift some weights and feel better. now when you're thinking about like not having any motivation or just not wanting to, right? You use your rational mind. You don't have to feel good to do something that you believe is good. In fact, most of the time you do things that are good, it won't feel good to do them, unfortunately, at least not at the beginning. What about the how your back hurts, right? Well, if it hurts really bad, you could go to the doctor and they could assess your back. And if you went to the doctor and he said it's fine and it only hurts because it's weak, well, guess what? You just turned your negative reason into a positive reason to weightlift, right? It's going to heal your back to make it stronger. And then maybe use your rational mind to tell yourself, I know I'm going to be embarrassed, but once I get familiar with what I'm doing and where I am, I know that's going to go away. And so, based on all that, the decision, right? It's just your own subjective judgment, but you have the ability to choose and make good decisions, right? I have faith based on my desires and my reasons listed above that if I lift weights 3 times per week for 3 months, I will become stronger and it will be worth the effort. Now that you have your plan in place and it's time to act, we should anticipate some opposition here. Anytime that you undertake the process of faith to obtain something good, there's going to be opposition from the other side. And so knowing that and intentionally looking for it will help you to avoid it when it comes. So, how might this opposition show itself? Well, almost always when you first start doing something good, before you start doing it, you're going to feel pretty bad. And that feeling might be all kinds of different feelings, but usually it's something like nervousness or anxiousness or dread. You might just feel lazy or tired, or like what you're about to do is pointless. You just got to ignore these feelings, put them out of your mind, or even better yet, use them as evidence that what you're doing might be good for you because it shows that something is trying to stop you from improving. You know, if you look at it from a purely religious perspective, and maybe you're familiar with the concept of the natural man or the natural desires that you have, anything that tortures or punishes the natural man that it doesn't like is helping you to become a spiritually driven being and a more enlightened being. And so use the complaining of the natural man as evidence for the reasons for what you're doing is right. Next, while you're actually doing your action, right? So if you're actually in the gym and you start going through your program, you might feel bad then too. You probably will. And you're definitely going to feel tired or sore or confused. And you might be lost because it's your first time going through something. So you should ignore all this as well and just use your rational mind and think through and realize that you already anticipated that you were going to be, there was going to be a bit of a learning curve. And that's okay. And just keep going and trust your reasoning, right? Look back at your evaluation that you wrote down. This is one of the reasons why you write it down and why you write it down when you're in a calm mind and you're not in a bad mood or something, so that you know that you can trust your past reasoning. Look at your desires, look at your reasons, think them through, and understand that you planned on doing this because you believed it would give you something. What happens if, despite all of these fail safes that you've taken, you actually fail to act, right? You don't act on your desire or reasons. Well, what that means is that those desires and reasons weren't what you thought they were, right? If you say my desire is to get stronger through weightlifting, and instead of weightlifting, you sit on the couch and eat Cheetos, then your desire wasn't to get stronger. Your desire was actually to be comfortable and to stay as you are. And you should have to think about that, right? Or maybe one of the reasons that you had wasn't as strong as you thought, and something as part of the process comes up, and you realize that there were some of the good reasons didn't apply, or there were extra bad reasons that you didn't know. Anyway, whichever one, you have to evaluate both the desires and the reasons, and change them and improve them in order to go back to getting yourself to act. So understand, right, that action is what matters, and you can't have your desires unless you act according to them. Now we get to the good part, right? So let's say that you've gone through your program, and we need to evaluate whether our faith was real and we've turned it into knowledge, or did maybe something else happen. So, first question you should ask yourself is, did you obtain your desire? And there's three sort of outcomes that you can look through, right? The first, yes, I'm strong enough to bench press my body weight. That was the stipulation that you said that for your goal, that was the outcome that you wanted. So if you've attained that, great, right? No further questions there. You might say no, but I've made consistent progress. So maybe, you started being able to bench press 100 pounds and now you can bench press 160 pounds. And that's not quite body weight, but you're getting closer. So you know that the path that you're on is going to yield what you want. It's going to take more time than you initially thought. That's also good information, right? You'll be able to refine your model of the path. And if you had to tell somebody else, you might say, hey, I did it this way. Instead of 3 months, it's going to take me 5, right? That's good information. And the other thing is you might say, no, I'm actually no closer to my desire than I was when I started. And so if that is the case, then you have to ask yourself why, because something is definitely wrong, right? And the thing that is wrong could be a number of different things, but it has to do with the path that you're on. Maybe your desire was unclear. Maybe the path actually wasn't the path. And this happens more often than you would think, right? I mean, people search for happiness, going down paths that they believe will give them those paths. And then they realize once they get down the end of that path that there was no happiness there. So at least if you do something like this, and it happens to the best of us in different ways, and it will happen when you're trying to get good things, not just, things that you thought were good. At least you find out that the path that you are on is not the path, and you can change and do something else. And that's also good. So you also need to ask yourself, did you actually follow your path? And it's surprising, or maybe it's not surprising. People don't follow their paths that they say they're following, and then they act like they did, right? So you might get false positives or false negatives. It's like, for example, what happens if you achieved your desire, but you didn't follow your path? Well, that most likely means that you were underachieving your potential, right? If you said, I'm going to take 3 months and lift 3 times a week in order to bench press my body weight, and at the end of that 3 weeks, you actually bench press double your body weight, maybe you're underselling what you could achieve. People that do this tend to not be very satisfied with the goals that they set. They seem to be bored, right? If something's always easy for you, it's not going to elicit the same amount of joy and satisfaction in achieving it as it would some other way. So this is a problem of desires. Increase your desires. Shoot for the moon. Go harder, right? And design a path for harder desires. You also might get a false negative, and this is for a lot of reasons. A lot of times it's the lack of real intent or honesty that drives this. And so this is back to my person who says, weightlifting doesn't work for me. I said, I've been working out and I've been trying to bench press my body weight, and here's my weightlifting plan that I did 3 times a week for 3 months. And somebody only goes one time a week for 3 months, or they only go for 1 month, and then they ask themselves, does this work for me? And they say no, and they say, see, it doesn't work. Weightlifting doesn't work for me. But well, you didn't follow the path. Okay, you have to follow the actual path, or you can't tell if it works or not. So maybe you had insufficient reasons or actions. Maybe the path just wasn't what it should be. But don't call a true path a bad path, right? This is one of the ways that you call evil good or good evil, right? Don't switch the two because you were dishonest. If you did obtain your desire, was it actually worth it? And that's an important question, because sometimes you can obtain something and at the end of it, you can determine that it was way more trouble than what it actually gave you. And so, depending on the answers to any of these questions, shows you the outcome of your faith. So, some last final notes, more general principles. You need to adjust your process as you get new information. As you follow the path that you've determined, so as you go down towards your goal, searching that outcome, you're going to get additional information to come to you because you're on that path. And if you get better reasons or better information, and it reveals a better path, then you should just jump over to that better path immediately without having to go through the rest of your experiment, right? You might receive additional positive or negative reasons you couldn't see before. Maybe you thought I'm going to bench press my body weight in 3 months or whatever, and then you start lifting, and it turns out you have a weak rotator cuff and you tear your rotator cuff. Maybe this isn't a good idea for you anymore, right? Or maybe you get into lifting a little bit and you realize that you really like it and it's giving you an increased amount of joy, like more than you expected. And so instead of just getting stronger in that way, you want to increase all the good parts of your health. And this is an increase to your desires and changes. And so it puts you on a different path as well. But all of these things can happen as you start to work towards the goal that you had using the process of faith. Really important, if you aren't getting what you want by following your path, your faith is in vain, right? And so don't do the Einstein insanity thing by keep doing the same thing over and over again and not getting what you want. I see this happens a lot too. People go to the gym, they lift the same amount of weight every time they go, and then they say, I'm not getting any stronger. It's like, well, you're not putting any more weight on the bar. Your path isn't right. Your faith is in vain. So it doesn't matter how much you're acting. If your faith isn't in something that's true, it's not going to give you the outcomes that you want. Because faith can only be, or can only produce the desired outcomes if it's based in truth. And that's another way of thinking of the process of faith, is the process of discovering the truth of cause and effect, right? And so as you map those things, as you understand the causes to get the effects that you want, you'll be able to reliably use those things to get those same outcomes. And one final note, I just wanted to again reiterate that small faith begets greater faith. And so every time you successfully follow the process of faith to go from just having a desire for an outcome all the way to obtaining it, that increases the amount of faith in you and strengthens it such that you are able to use it to achieve bigger outcomes going forward later. So I think that's the end of our presentation here, but I really hope that this information is helpful for you. And I'd invite you to consider how you use the process of faith in your life to obtain what you want, and to really identify your desires and your actions that will get you them, and the reasons that underlie those desires and actions. And that way, you can be like Peter said that you should be, which is ready to give everyone a reason for the things that you believe and the hope that is in you. Take care.